What's up, fam? Welcome back to the Steep Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, James Loriello, and today I'm so excited to bring you guys a conversation with Jessie McAuley. Jessie McAuley is a ski mountaineer and mountain runner who runs for Arc'teryx, and he's based in Squamish, British Columbia. Jessie most recently had a top 10 finish at the Meet the Minotaur Sky Race, as well as a podium finish at the Mount Marathon race in Seward, which is part of the reason that spurred this great conversation. I was just so blown away by his accomplishments over in the 2024 season that I felt like we had to link up for a conversation. Not just from the competition side, but Jessie is just a really exciting guy that loves to be outside and just really does it because he loves being in the outdoors. He also has an affinity for mountain biking, which he used to compete at a very high level, as well as climbing, which he does for fun. Like I said, super interesting character. We talked all about what it's like to live at Squamish, British Columbia, which is just, high level place. It's like your Boulder, Colorado for athletes in Canada. And yeah, we talked a lot about all kinds of fun stuff. So I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. It's a personal favorite of mine. Jesse's a great dude. And I can't wait to see where his 2025 season and his future is going to take him in the sport. So without further ado, none other than Jessie McAuley.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Jessie McAuley, welcome to the Steep Stuff Podcast. How are you, dude?
I'm doing well. Just got back from a quick jog in the sun. So yeah, having a good day here in Squamish.
Nice, man. I saw your Instagram post the other day. Are you sick too? Or are you just getting over being sick as well?
Yeah. After the holidays, I think there was a whole bunch of different colds going around. So both my girlfriend and I ended up getting something for the last sort of 10 days here, but I'm starting to feel a lot better, especially the last couple days. So
nice, man. Good to hear. Yeah, I feel the same thing, man. It was like last week or the week before. I was like, training's going perfect. I was like, this is a great block. All of a sudden I get nailed with something. I was like, man, I feel like everybody's sick this week.
Yeah, it's the same up here. I feel like it's I think it's just, a couple of weeks after the holidays, there's lots of stuff going around and, people are back to training and stuff. Maybe the immune systems are a little taxed. So I think it's like, I could kind of see it coming. So I wasn't surprised I got sick, but happy to be getting better.
Nice, man. Nice. Well, hey, let's talk a little bit about your background. I already introduced you by name. For those of the audience that maybe don't know who you are, maybe just give a little brief synopsis about your background, and then I'll kind of break it down from there.
Yeah, sounds good. My name's Jessie McAuley. I'm 24 years old from Squamish, BC. Originally, I grew up in the northern Rocky Mountains in British Columbia, and then moved to Squamish when I was quite young. Spent most of my life moving through the mountains in one way or another, whether that's climbing or skiing with my family. And my background in competition is actually mostly in mountain bike racing up until around 2017, and then I slowly started finding this world of trail running and ski mountaineering and that sort of thing. But I raced downhill mountain bikes for 7 years throughout all of high school, basically.
Oh, wow. So you jumped onto the scene for me over the last 2 years. You had a podium finish at Meet the Minotaur in 2023, and then you got third last year at Mount Marathon, correct? And that's where I was like, oh man, this kid, I got to get this guy on the podcast. So yeah, that's what kind of like brought you onto the scene and kind of, I guess introduced you to me in a lot of ways. but Adam, our mutual friend Adam Campbell from Arc'teryx had spoken so highly of you. It's why one of the reasons why I wanted to chat as well. So, I don't know where I was going with that, but I just felt like I'd bring it up. We could talk about your race season going in a little bit, but like I'm kind of curious, man. I have talked to so many people that like live in Squamish. What is that experience like for you? I mean, I feel like everybody is an elite athlete in one way, shape, or form. Is that kind of the way it works?
Yeah, living in Squamish is, I mean, it's wonderful for the most part. I mean, you have to be able to tolerate some rain, especially in the fall season here. Like it's very, very wet from like late September through to December. But if you can tolerate that, it's a pretty awesome spot to be. There's a ton of athletes in town. Probably mostly like most of the most well-known athletes in Squamish are probably mountain bikers and climbers. Like I would say Squamish is most well-known for mountain biking and for climbing. Just because we've got the chief right above town. So there's lots of excellent granite, like 5 minutes bike ride from most people's houses, and definitely some pretty world-class mountain bike riding. But then the trickle down from there, there's excellent trail running, there's really good alpine climbing and ski touring. So it's kind of like this hub for outdoor sports, which I think attracts a lot of people who are interested in those sports. So yeah, you end up having a lot of sort of committed, driven athletes in town.
Is it like, so I think of like, I'm in Colorado. I live in Colorado Springs. Like we've got I guess a healthy dose of elite athletes here. And it's really nice to have people to train with, but it's not too much. Whereas like you look at a place like Boulder, where I'd say there's more elite athletes there than there are normal people. Is it more of like a stressful thing, kind of living in a place where you feel like you have to get out and have to train and have to do these things, almost like that's like that societal pressure? Or is it more
I feel like
thing?
I think it really depends. Like it just depends how you approach those things. I think like, I mean, I don't struggle personally with, FOMO, fear of missing out too much, but I think if that's something that you do struggle with, then it can be tough living in a place like this, just because there's like so many people doing interesting stuff pretty much all the time. So, for some reason you're injured or something and you're out of commission for a month or so, I think it could really feel like, you're missing out on so much. But for me, I don't find it too stressful. I mean, it's nice to have so many good training partners, and just being able to feed off other people. But I think Squamish is not quite at the level of say like Boulder quite yet, in terms of, Boulder's got like such a wide variety of athletes, from like pro triathletes to trail runners to climbers. Like it really has the full gamut. Like Squamish is still a relatively small town. Like there's 24,000 people here. So
Okay.
not a huge city by any means.
Oh, wow. I gotta go. It's on my list of places to visit.
Yeah. I mean, you're welcome to crash here. I'm sure Adam would offer you up a room too. So
Yeah, I gotta soak in everything that like that area has to offer, man.
I
So
would say come in the spring, or spring, early summer is a wicked time to be in town here.
what is it like for you? Because you are a very traditional two-sport athlete. I understand your background obviously is mountain running, but also in ski mountaineering. Is it easy access for you? Like, do you just have great access to be able to do both?
Pretty much, yeah, and it does depend a little bit on the season. Like last winter, for example, we had a terrible winter, so access was kind of difficult all of last winter. But most winters, I can drive 5 minutes from the house, hop on the local gondola, and be on skis. And then for running, we have like a really good mix of sort of less technical flowy trails in the valley, and then like steep rugged trails on the valley walls, and then really good alpine running and technical scrambling. So the access is pretty good here. I think that's one of my favorite parts about Squamish, is just ease of access.
Yeah, it's so highly touted, man. So what a cool place to live. I don't want to bury the lead too much, because I kind of just brought up skiing. I know we're kind of in the midst now of pretty full on skimo season. I know a lot of my American friends, specifically like the Coloradans, and those are like quite a few guys are over in Andorra now for like World Cup and stuff like that. What is your skimo life like? Like what I guess you could say like what do you like to race more so, and maybe break it down for what you're into for that.
Um, yeah, I've been racing skimo since early 2019. And then I guess there's like a kind of a full gap year in there with COVID in Canada. There was kind of like no racing going on. But I would say my main focus in skimo is the individual. And then I also enjoy the vertical and but really like the individual and the grand course racing is my favorite aspect about the sport. I have loads of respect for sprinters and the mixed relay because it's very hard discipline, super difficult, but it's just not really what inspires me about the sport. It's not what got me excited about it in the first place. So um, yeah, going forward this year, I mean, ideally, I probably would have been over in Andorra to race the individual there and potentially Belle Étoile, a grand course race right after. But life's expensive and funds are things. So I'm going to go for a longer trip in the second half of the season, probably for months. Yeah, 4 to 6 weeks around World Championships and do World Championships, Pyramenta, and then some other World Cups afterwards.
Nice. Have you done Pyramenta yet?
Yeah, I raced there in 2023 with my Canadian teammate Matt Ruda. But that was the first time in I think 36 years that Pyramenta actually had to cancel a stage because the weather was so bad. So it was still an amazing experience, but I feel like I didn't quite get the full Pyramenta experience. So I'm pretty excited to go back this year.
Do you think you can like paint a picture of like what Pyramenta is for those who don't know much about skimo?
Yeah, I would compare Pyramenta to, I mean, really like any big sporting event in any other sport. So, but I'm trying to think if there's like an example for running. Like, I mean, it's almost kind of like the UTMB of trail running, but for ski mountaineering. Just the atmosphere around it is really crazy. It's a 4 day stage race, and you're racing for 2.5 to 4 hours every day. And thousands of people come out lining the course. So there's sections where you're boot packing up ridge lines and there's just hundreds of people on the side of the course yelling so loud that you can't hear yourself breathe. It's really it's quite a scene. It's very technical. Um, it kind of it really embodies ski mountaineering and what the sport is all about, I think.
Oh wow. It's such a I don't know. I feel like being in the Beauforton Valley and just that like iconic area just like adds to it too. And you see all these I don't know, like you see all these like heroes of the sport too, like Francois Dane running around and Jim Walmsley and people like that, which is it's kind of wild. Like
Francois Dane lives like 100 meters from the start line of the race.
That's so crazy. Yeah. How old were you when you got into more ski related stuff, maybe in ski mountaineering proper?
Yeah, well, I've been backcountry skiing my whole life essentially since I was very little, but I got into competitive ski mountaineering when I was I guess I was 18, almost 19. So yeah, like 6 years or so now.
Now, obviously things have changed quickly in the sport. Now it's progressed to where it's an Olympic sport, and they've kind of, I don't want to say they like, I don't think it's fair to say they ruined it, but like the way there's like certain, like I think like it would be cool if we had a vertical, it would be cool if we had an individual and stuff like that. Do you have any like Olympic aspirations for it because those two things aren't in there for like the sprint or the mixed relay or not really?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I think I'm not super driven for the Olympics. I mean, I've been racing, bikes and on foot and on skis for a long time, and I think one thing I've learned from when I was younger is if your head's not fully in it, like you just can't perform at your best. And I'm realistically just not extremely motivated for sprinting and mixed relay. And I think the Olympics are really cool, but if my head's not in it and I'm not inspired by the discipline, then I think it's just not going to be I'm not going to be trying my best probably. So I would like to just keep doing what I'm inspired by, which is yeah, more focus on individual and vertical disciplines.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, man. And like that's the thing. Like you're only going to do the best at the stuff that really inspires you and gets you excited to go compete at
Yeah,
it. And
exactly.
it's funny. Like I've only met maybe one person that was like stoked on the sprint. Like not I don't meet a ton of people that like love the sprint. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely like, I think if you interviewed um, a bunch of people from Europe, you'd probably get different answers. But um, it's definitely different. I yeah, I'm not going to call it contrived, but it's almost a different sport entirely in
Yeah.
some ways. Yeah.
What is the Canadian scene like for skimo? Like, is it like how we have like, so for instance, like we have like USA skimo where it's kind of like under this umbrella, and I guess they partially fund or fully fund you to be able to go to a lot of these races and compete from like a national team perspective. Is it like the same thing in Canada?
Yeah, the Canadian scene is relatively small. Skimo's been it's been a thing in Canada for a long time. Like there's history of people racing skimo from Canada going back probably 25 years now, at least, close to 2000 anyways. But it's always been a pretty core small group of people. So the governing body in Canada is called the SMCC, so Ski Mountaineering Competition Canada. I think that's right. And then they host Canada Cups. So there's usually like 4 to 6 per year. And then we do have like a national team. So for World Championships and World Cups, you go to those races under the title of the national team. But in Canada in general, for ski mountaineering, there's very little funding, if any. So hopefully that, I mean, maybe that's one benefit of it becoming an Olympic sport is maybe there will be funding for it in the future. But just in general, Canada, like Sport Canada and Canada as a whole does not pump nearly as much money into sports as some other countries or neighboring countries like the US. So I would be a little bit skeptical um, to think that Canada will get lots of funding ever for ski mountaineering, but hopefully I'm wrong, and that does happen eventually. But for now we're more or less on our own for funding.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, like, call me naive, but like I would have thought the exact opposite that there would be, especially because there's such a strong mountain culture in BC and areas like that, that there would be I don't know, and just so many athletes in that space that it would have caught
Yeah.
on and bigger.
Yeah, there's definitely some skepticism around the sport, I would say. Like, and I think slowly people are becoming more curious of it than skeptical, which is good. Like, I tend to get more questions on the track now, as opposed to maybe 5 years ago, I got more judgment on the skin track when I was on my skinny skis. But it's kind of a cultural thing. Like historically, people come to BC to ski really deep powder and shred pillows, and I respect that because the skiing is really good out here. So skimo is kind of like this little like niche in the corner of like free ride skiing and just general touring in BC.
Interesting. Do you guys have any solid races out there?
Yeah, yeah, there's a race that happens in Golden every year called Steep Dreams. And like, of course, I'm a little biased saying this, but I would say it's probably one of the best courses in North America. Um, I mean, with that, I'd probably include like I've never raced there, but the race that happens at Big Sky is supposed to be really cool, and also like Powder Keg. Um, but yeah, if there's any American skimo racers that haven't raced Steep Dreams, I would definitely recommend it. It's a properly technical course, and the team's race is awesome.
Absolutely, man. Well, hopefully anybody listening to this comes out and checks it out,
Yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah. Come on for a visit. I mean, especially like if you're from Montana, it's really not too far across the border. Like from the border at Whitefish, it's probably only like 2 hours to Golden, so it's not too far.
That's not bad. It's funny. I don't think people realize like how big that area of Canada is. Like when I was talking to Adam, and I'm like I said, I'm naive, I'm an idiot. But I was talking to Adam, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, Squamish, how far could that be from like Meet the Minotaur? And then he said
Yeah,
it's like something
pretty
like
far.
700 miles. I was like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, it's quite far for sure. Like for example, like 10 days ago, I had a race near Crow's Nest Pass where the Minotaur happens. And this year we opted to fly because it's like a 14-hour drive from Squamish. You're just like, yeah, it's pretty far. So it's worth flying to Calgary and renting a car and then, still driving 3 hours to get there instead of driving from Squamish.
That is so crazy. Is that like I wouldn't say interesting, but is that like like it must be a pain in the neck to get to Europe then from where you are.
Yeah, it's not as bad as you think because Vancouver is so close. It's pretty easy. Like whenever I fly to Europe, I usually go like YVR Frankfurt Munich, and it's quite efficient. Pretty much like a 10-hour direct flight.
It's not bad. Yeah.
It's still a long flight, but I feel like it could be worse. It could have to make like a bunch of stopovers, and I mean, it always depends how much you're willing to spend on a ticket. Of course, the cheaper tickets are, you might fly to Denver first and then to New York and then to Barcelona and then to your location. But I usually try and find a direct flight YVR to Munich or Frankfurt.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It just got me thinking because it is like, I mean, yeah, Vancouver's not that far, but like still because when you're putting together like a race calendar, you have to be really smart, I guess, about like it's not like you can jump into DIA and get anywhere in the Mountain West you need within
Yeah,
a couple
yeah,
hours.
exactly. I think one of the only downsides of living out here as a skimo racer is even just within North America, most of the races are quite far from us. So, I mean, even the Canada Cups, like the closest Canada Cup to us is like an 8-hour drive. Um, our most local race is actually this race called VertFest that happens down in Snoqualmie Pass in Washington, which is like 2 hours. But there's no races like super close to Squamish, which is a bit of a bummer. Hopefully that'll change in the future, but Whistler Blackcomb's pretty opposed to uphill skiing, so we'll
Are
see.
they really? Interesting.
Yeah. They do have an uphill route, but it's like one cat track and it's, 5 a.m. to 9:30 are the only hours they let you skin.
Interesting. What is the like the situation like there? Because like obviously on my end there was or at least on the trail running end there was obviously some back and forth with the UTMB situation and then Gary Robbins race that he was trying to put on or is trying to put on. Is it like pretty open to trail runners there, like especially like on the like more in Whistler, or is it more not so much? I'm just trying to understand
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I would say like the trail running scene in the Sea to Sky is huge, and it's growing more and more every year. Like trail running is just, I think like everywhere, it's just becoming exponentially more popular. The issue for having races in the corridor here is in Squamish, we're in this valley that's Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton, and basically all the mountains on either side are provincial parks. And BC Parks does not like to host, like they don't want they don't want events in the park. So that's a problem because that kind of, axes out a huge amount of awesome terrain. And then around Whistler, there's loads of permitting issues. I'm not totally sure why, but like I think from day one for Gary hosting Whistler or hosting races on Whistler Blackcomb was a bit of a headache just permitting wise. And I think even for UTMB Whistler this past season, originally they proposed this like big amazing course, and then like over the course of a couple months they kept having to like shrink it and add more little loops and this and that due to permitting issues. It really is a shame because in Whistler, you could have a really, kick-ass 100-mile like single loop all the way around the valley that, tags a bunch of local sort of runners summits and that sort of thing. But and maybe that's coming one day, but for now the permits are a bit of a problem.
Yeah. Oh man. Now you did. I was in my research. I was on looking at some of your results and stuff like that. You had done some of the Whistler Alpine Meadows races back in the day,
Yeah.
right? Were they pretty rad? Like I mean, I've
Yeah.
just heard of legend that they were just like epic.
Yeah, yeah, it was always a really good course. Like those were some of my first ultras. and actually Wham in 2017 was my first ever trail running race. Yeah, Gary puts on really good events. So I feel like he runs a company called Coast Mountain Trail Series, and those events are like crazy popular and for good reason. He puts a ton of energy into it, and you really feel that when you're at his events.
Yeah, no, I mean, on the American side, like he's like beloved here. Like everybody loves his stuff. So
Yeah,
uh,
Gary's a good guy. Yeah.
for
Yeah,
sure.
super.
Well, dude, in the beginning of the conversation, I had mentioned that like you popped onto the scene for me in a couple different ways. One was meet the Minotaur, and we could talk about Minotaur later. But one of the things I got to talk about was like your lights out performance at Mount Marathon this past year, where you got on the podium. Can you add a little commentary to that race and like just like what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I first raced Mount Marathon in 2019, and just, had an amazing experience and have wanted to go back and race there ever since. So I was sixth overall in 2019. And then a bunch of years go by, and I finally went back last year. Um, and I mean, I think I was putting some expectations on myself to try and perform well, and it was a bit tough because it was 10 days after Meet the Minotaur, so a tight turnaround. So I wasn't totally sure how that would work out. Um, and I think I think I suffered a bit more than I would have liked on the climb, but I mean everyone's suffering on the climb, so it's not really much of an excuse. But I had a really good descent, which um, definitely saved the race for me because I was at the top with like a group of 4 or 5 other people. I was in like maybe sixth or seventh, and then had a really good fast descent time, which at Mount Marathon really counts for a lot. Like if you can run the descent smooth and fast and still have some legs left for the kilometer of pavement at the end, it really makes a difference. But I mean, for anyone listening out there who's considering racing it, I really couldn't recommend it enough. It's by far one of the wildest events in trail running, especially in North America. It's such an amazing scene.
It's bananas, man. I have not raced it yet. It's planned for this year if I can get in. I don't know how that's going to work. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, you have decent odds than if you apply in the lottery. Like I feel like it's pretty much 50-50.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely recommended.
Oh,
Get
for
up.
sure. Are
Yeah.
you a roots or a cliffs guy?
I have always went through the cliffs. But I feel like conditions, could change that on different years. But I do feel like the cliffs are kind of the most direct and maybe the least you're actually, I think you're a bit less likely to like trip and tumble there. And it kind of forces you to like slow down for a second, which I think is not a terrible thing.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't think it makes a huge difference which way you go there. Like people do like to obsess a lot about like, do you take the cliffs or the routes? But I think they're both pretty similar, to be honest.
The only person I've heard of like having massive success at the roots was Allie, who broke the
Oh
record a few years ago, and she's the only one who was like, "Yeah, roots all the way."
yeah, yeah. I mean, there you go, right?
Uh,
Like, yeah, I'm sure if more people started taking the routes, then more people would be psyched on the routes.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Do you think you'll go back again this year for 2025?
Yeah, that's definitely the plan. I feel like going back while it's fresh in my memory is good. You just kind of remember the descent a little bit more, and maybe I won't have to like scope the course quite as much before the race. And it's just such an awesome event. I'm pretty psyched on going back again.
What is that finish line? Or just like, is it just like the entire town basically comes out and is just yelling in the streets, like
Yeah,
getting the
pretty
hype
much.
going?
I mean, it's on July 4th, so there's lots going on in Seward, and Seward is like this cute little port town. But there's a lot of cruise ships that land in Seward, so you have like the locals, you have the tourists off the cruise ships in town watching. It's yeah, it's really quite crazy.
What was your, maybe provide some commentary on like your prep for something like Mount Marathon? No, I know you were getting ready for Minotaur first, right? So obviously there's got to be some crossover between those two. But like, were you just on a ton of steep stuff, or like what was your fitness like going into a race like this?
Um, yeah, I mean, this past season was a bit funny. In all honesty, I think I like peaked a little bit too early before Minotaur. And then I was in like really good shape just before, like a couple weeks out from Minotaur. And then race Minotaur. Didn't have the best day at Minotaur, but just kind of survived and pushed through to the finish. And then after Minotaur, I got home and like hopped on the bike a bunch. I actually tried not to run that much the 10 days in between those races. Just like I probably took like 4 days off running right away or 5 days off running and just biked a bit and pretty much just did everything I could to try and be rested coming into it. But both those races, like, I mean, obviously much different intensities and much different distances, but they have a lot in common. They're both really steep and really technical. So, um, I think the terrain you train on for both of them is somewhat similar. Yeah, fair. I mean, yeah, a fair bit of steep terrain, but you still need running legs for both those races, so you can't forget the runnable stuff.
For sure. Now, I understand you started working relatively recently, right, with David Norris, correct, as your coach?
Yeah. Yeah, back in August. So yeah, I guess it's been like almost 6 months now.
Nice. And what has that experience been like? I mean, he's the man. Like I raced him at Cirque Series Brighton and he whooped my ass this year. He's so good.
Yeah, he's pretty darn impressive. He's got a huge engine, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's been a great experience so far. Like I haven't had really any coaching since my cycling days. And I mean, there's pros to being self-coached for sure, but I think I definitely struggled with a lot of things like in especially like, when to be in good shape for, X race coming up and peaking at the right time. And um I think having a coach has prevented me from doing too much. And just having a bit of structure has taken some stress off me too, like I feel like before it was you're always kind of asking yourself questions like, oh, is tomorrow the right day to do intervals, or should I give myself an extra day rest and do it the next day? Whereas now I kind of have that stress off my back, and it's kind of like, okay, I really trust the training he's giving me, and I'm like, okay, if he's saying I should do, rest for 2 days and do intervals this day and volume the next day, then that sounds great. Yeah, I think in general with training, like I do kind of have the philosophy that there's like no big secret to it, it's like as I think as long as you're training pretty well, and for endurance sports, if you're doing enough hours, then it's probably going to work out okay for you. But I think having a coach has really helped me like pepper in the little things here and there that count, like doing more strides on my easy runs and stuff like that.
It's interesting too. And I think the biggest thing that I took away from being coached and having coaches is like, I think for me, it's a similar struggle. It's understanding like, all right, when is the right time to taper? How much taper should I be doing? Right.
Yeah.
It's like, am I doing enough? Am I not? Like I don't know. I second guess myself sometimes. So it's like one of those things to have an idea. Plus, like, I think for you too, it makes a lot of sense, especially with someone like David Norris, because his ski background too, he can kind of coach you at everything,
Yeah, exactly. And I like over the past couple of years, I've really started to think that there is a lot of crossover between Nordic and Skimo, especially with a lot of the workouts and just the amount of hours that Nordic skiers put in. It's I think there's a lot of transfer, and in the past 6 months I've really seen that with a lot of the workouts I've been doing and whatnot. It's all pretty similar.
How much are you running on like when you get to skimo season? Like now, are you just running a couple times a week or?
Yeah, I feel like I'm running like I mean, honestly, I'm probably running like 3 days a week, but just like short runs and keeping them more runnable this time of year because I'm not lacking the vertical, so I don't really need to go plot up the steep trails. But lots of like I do lots of days where I'll ski for a couple hours in the morning and then do schoolwork throughout the day and then go for a nice easy run in the evening with strides or something.
Nice. Yeah. You spend a lot of time in the gym. Like, do you do like any gym work?
I do typically at least two quality sessions a week. I'm lucky that we have a bit of a garage space, so I can do them at home. Um, but I used to do a ton of gym work when I was mountain biking, especially for downhill mountain biking. It's like really important to be in the gym a lot, more like 4 days a week. But I feel like I was kind of sick of it at the end of my mountain bike career, so I kind of stopped doing stuff in the gym for probably like 4 or 5 years and just getting back into it this year. I've actually started to appreciate it again. And I feel like I have seen benefits from it. I think just in terms of, I actually think it allows me to handle more volume without getting injured. It's kind of funny, but I think it just makes me a little bit more durable to put in more hours. So yeah, I've been really appreciating it actually.
It's amazing, man, what it can do for you. Like I similar space where I came from more of a team sports background before I got into trail running. And a lot of that team sports was a lot of time in the gym. Didn't really like it because I didn't want to get big. I didn't want to be like super muscular. I wanted to stay away from that. And then I started doing a lot more, just lower body stuff and plyometrics. And it is amazing, like how I think from an injury prevention perspective too. That kind of alleviates most of your stuff. It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with you. And then kind of in more Nordic skier fashion, I've been doing my gym days usually on the same days as my intensity, which I've actually come to like quite a bit because then my easy days are super easy and my hard days are quite hard. But I think it allows your body enough time to recover between sessions, which is nice.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the way to do it, man. I never could understand that in the beginning, like blocking both of them, but as I've started to do them more after my speed work, it does make a lot of difference.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of interesting. I've definitely I've had a few days this winter where I've, for some reason had to do my strength session first in the morning and then intervals in the afternoon. And like in my head, I'm like, oh, this is gonna ruin my interval session. But it's almost like does the opposite a little bit. I found it like almost makes you a little bit springier in your interval session after, even though you're still a bit tired. But yeah, it's interesting stuff for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, dude. I was I was doing box jumps the other day, and I slammed my shin into the side
Oh,
of the
yeah.
box. You ever do one of those, dude?
Yeah,
I thought I had a
yeah,
golf ball on my leg. I
yeah.
thought I broke my tibia. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah, not too long ago, I had like the same thing happen in our garage, and I think my girlfriend just heard a huge slam in the house, and she ran into the garage like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like lying there on the ground holding my shin. So, yeah, you gotta pay attention for sure.
Oh yeah, dude. We got one of those like Ring cameras in the backyard, and I got a video of myself doing it. I'm like, one of these days I got to post this. Like,
Yeah.
it's so funny.
No, I mean it happens to all of us, for
Yeah.
sure.
So you had said you're doing school. What are you going to school for now?
Yeah, I actually just started going to school like 2 months ago. I'm just in an online program right now through a university in Kamloops, BC. I'm just working on a Bachelor of Arts. I graduated high school in 2018, so I ended up taking 5 or 6 years off, and my parents do have RESP fund put away for me, and I have 10 years to use that. So I really do want to use it. So I figured this is probably a good time, and I'm going to do the first couple years online. And I think it works really well with being an athlete right now because, I can, study first thing in the morning and then go exercise for a few hours and then come home and plug away at it for the afternoon and do something else in the evening. So it's been a nice flow so far for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it gives you good balance as an athlete to be able to
Yeah.
do both. One of the things I thought that was amazing on your Instagram is your photography skills are awesome too. Do you do a lot of photography or?
Yeah, I've been shooting photos kind of as long as I can remember, like with my mom's little point and shoot. And then I was actually when I was quite young, I would sell photo cards, and then eventually I sold enough photo cards to buy like a little Nikon DSLR. And then yeah, it's kind of all evolved from there. So yeah, I've been shooting photos for quite a long time. It's definitely one of my passions. I've occasionally tried to do it for work, but I think especially in recent years, I've realized that I really do like having it as like kind of a hobby and not something I try and generate an income through, because I find for me with photography that kind of like took the joy out of it a little. So yeah, it's really kind of my for fun thing that I focus on the side sometimes, and I do enjoy it.
It's super cool, man. I always love finding these hobbies where that keep you a little more grounded, where it's not about competition, it's not about this, it's not about that. Like I've talked to others, some do photography. I was just talking to a gentleman the other day that does fly fishing, and it just goes out into the backcountry, fly fishes, and it's just his fun thing to do, where it kind of just grounds you, and you don't have to really worry about competition or the outside world or anything like that. Which is
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. And like, I mean, I was always one of those kids in school that excelled at the creative things and less at the more academic things. So I've always really enjoyed things like writing and photography. I mean, really, I'd love to mix all those things together in a career at some point in the future. I think that would be the long-term goal for me.
Super cool, man. So was it last year? Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. You joined the Arc'teryx team, correct?
Yeah, back in June, like just before Meet the Minotaur last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit, like that's got to be a life-changing experience to be a member of that running team and just what that's like. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's been awesome so far. I think I think for Canadians, and especially some Canadian runners and other athletes, I think sometimes it can be a little bit hard to reach out to companies and get you know and sign contracts or get deals that are like actually quite helpful. Like I think often for Canadians, we have to go through our local rep who then has to go through, someone else maybe in Boulder. And then there's like a lot of stepping stones. And I think often it's quite hard. But I got super lucky with Arc'teryx because they're local in North Vancouver. And because they're local, they have a lot of international athletes, but they do try and seek out some local talent as well. Um, so I think for me, it's like the best company that I could be involved with, just because they're local and they understand the running scene around here. So, I mean, that even helped me in ways that, like if I was to say tell, Sportiva about some local FKT I did in the Sea to Sky here, they'd be like, "Oh, okay. I mean, interesting. I've never heard of that. I'm sure it's cool, but I've never heard of it before." Whereas if I tell that to Arc'teryx, they're like, "Oh, that's cool." Like they can grasp those things, because they're local and understand. So yeah, it's been really helpful so far, and having a little bit of funding from them for travel and life is, yeah, it goes a long ways.
Yeah, I mean they make great stuff, it's amazing to see the new shoe technology that they're coming out with, and it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely emerging as one of the premier brands, if not the premier brand in the space for mountain running in a lot of ways now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it works well for me too because I rock climb a lot and obviously like ski a lot in the winter, and it's nice that they make products for those things as well. So it's helpful for me in more than just the run space. But it's a good time for me to be involved with them because they're starting to put more money into their run scene. So yeah, I think they'll be bringing on some new athletes kind of in the next couple months here and growing that space more and more. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be part of it.
No, absolutely, man. And what a team. I mean, like already a great team of athletes, but some of the new folks that are coming on, pretty exciting as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's super cool. Yeah.
What is it like, I guess, with like working with Adam in a lot of ways? Is especially because he's pretty local to you, is he more of like I guess from a mentor perspective, him and Nick Ellison just kind of mentors for you, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Adams for like 6 years now. Yeah, Adam's just been a good friend the whole way, and he's really mentored me a lot, especially in this space with sponsorships and more quote unquote professional athletics. Where whereas I might feel a little bit lost in that world otherwise, and he's got such a deep knowledge about how all that stuff works. So it's really nice to have him close by to bounce ideas off. Like I can just call him up and say, "I want to go for a run. I've got a bunch of questions for you about you know, X thing in my contract that I don't understand, and he's able to break it down for me. So yeah, he's been a good friend, adventure partner, climbing partner, neighbor, good guy to have around for sure. I'm lucky he lives in Squamish.
I couldn't think of like a cooler dude, like and a nicer human, like just
Yeah,
a good person.
yeah,
Happy to
really.
I got him on the pod.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that episode. I mean, I'm like, I keep nudging Adam because I actually think he'd be a really good podcast host. I'm
Yeah.
like, God, he should get something going. I know you're tight for time, but I think you'd do a good job at it. So I'll keep bugging him.
Oh, you should, man. I'd love to hear. I mean, I think that would be, especially his unique perspective and his life journey has been just an interesting one. So definitely, yeah. I'm gonna shoot him a text after this and tell him to start a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe if more of us hassle him too, he might actually start one. I mean,
So,
I'm
oh,
sure
sorry.
Terry has a recording studio at the office. So.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool. What is that? What is that headquarters like? Is it like everything I imagine, like
Yeah,
Candyland for?
it is pretty crazy. Like the design center is a wild space. So you just like walk upstairs into this building and there's just like, you know, hundreds of hundreds and hundreds of feet of in these rolls of Gore-Tex and all sorts of crazy stuff and sewing machines and tons of busy people doing different things. It's a pretty crazy space.
That's wild, man. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. It's a cool brand. Definitely cool to see what they have planned, and I can't wait to see some of the new shoe technology coming out. So
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. They've been. I do a lot of testing for them because I'm local, so it's easy to get product over to me. And yeah, there's definitely some really interesting stuff in the works, especially like, a year and a half, 2 years down the road. I think there's going to be some really cool footwear.
For sure, for sure. Well, let's talk 2025. What do you we kind of talked a little bit about your skiing schedule and what you had planned for kind of the late winter spring, but what do you have planned for the racing season this year?
Yeah, so I mean, post skimo season, I'd like to do Mount Marathon again. And then I did actually just get an entry into the 28K at Run the Rut.
Nice.
So I'd like to do that again. Um, the rest of the season, I'm not totally sure yet. I'm on the fence about Minotaur because I mean, I've raced Minotaur, 5 years in a row. It's by far one of my favorite races, but I know that if I want to perform my best at Mount Marathon, it would probably benefit me not to do it this year. So I'm considering that. And then part of me is considering staying in Europe a bit longer after the skimo season to do Sky Race de Méthossay in France.
Oh, that's a
'Cause it's
race, man.
Yeah, and it's quite early. And I think it's a good race to come into like purely with skimo fitness. I mean, the downhill will be a bit crushing on the legs at that time of year, but I think having the skimo engine for that race could be quite helpful. Um, so yeah, if I can afford it, I'm thinking I'll stay a bit longer for that. And then other than that, as much as I want to do more sky races, and I do, it's pretty hard to have like I guess it's one thing hard about being North American and competing in both those sports is doing two race seasons in Europe, like cost a ton, and then it's also quite it's just tiring to travel that much.
Yeah.
So I mean, honestly, we have so many competitive races in North America. And I feel like there's more and more technical ones popping up here and there. So I'll probably try and race mostly within North America this summer. Um, just not exactly sure which races yet. I know
You gotta,
like Daybreak Racing has some pretty cool stuff going on down in Washington, and
yeah.
like some smaller events popping up here and there that are looking really cool. So there's lots of options.
That East Trail Fest looks sick, man. I've had that on my schedule now like 3 years in a row, and I just have never been able to pull it off just because we're at
Yeah,
six in July. But
yeah, that one looks really good. And then the other one I'm quite excited to race is what's it called? It's just across from Mount St. Helens. It's not the Volcanic 50, but it's put on by Daybreak and it's in the mountains across from St. Helens and it looks really
yeah,
beautiful.
it's like the back, not backcountry, backcountry
Backcountry
rise.
Ride.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That
yeah.
does look cool. They have like a good 20-mile route. You know, dude,
Yeah.
I've had so many, like I said, so many like over the years, like I've really wanted to do volcanic and just couldn't fit it into the schedule. So yeah, there's a lot of really good races in the PNW that I just feel like are slept on. Like volcanic, it's like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
only true circumnavigation race that's like a 50K. It's a
Yeah.
perfect right around. Like I've run the Lewitt Trail once and I was just astounded. It's a
Oh,
beautiful place. Yeah.
yeah, I actually raced Volcanic 50 in 2022. And yeah, I had a great experience. I'd totally recommend it. It's yeah, prepare for heat. That's my best advice.
Yeah, it's a hot, hot race,
It's
hot and
really tough.
exposed.
Because in the first half of the race, you're like in the forest and it's cool and you're kind of going through drainages and crossing some creeks. But then the entire second half of the race, you're like crossing volcanic slopes in the Alpine that are south facing. And if you're not prepared for that, it's a real beatdown in the second half.
Oh yeah, man. The blast zone is like the desert, man. It's
Oh, it's
crazy.
so cool. It's like another planet. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I remember like I had like a filter flask with me trying to like and I'm like filtering some of that water and it's just straight silt.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I definitely laid down in some of those creeks because it was much.
Yeah. Do you
Um,
have what about Worlds, man? Do you have any anticipation to want to like race for the Canadian national team for
yeah,
Worlds?
I probably won't this coming year just because I didn't do Squamish 50 last year, which was that was kind of like the main qualifying race. Just wasn't at a great time of the year for me. So yeah, probably not this year. I would like to in the future. I raced the short trail at Worlds in 2023. Actually had a pretty rough day and ended up having to DNF. Just I think was a bit sick beforehand, and then it started getting worse closer to the race. But still a great experience, and maybe I think for the next World cycle I'll try and go probably.
Yeah. Well, dude, you're so young. You have so much time to figure out like exactly
Yeah,
what you want,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, there's lots to do for sure. There's also I was looking at this. I saw that Skyrunning um, announced that they're doing a race in Ireland this
Oh, wow.
or yeah, so I think that'll be in I want to say October at some point. I've always wanted to race in the UK, so I think that'd be a really cool one to do maybe.
Yeah, that would be awesome, man. Yeah, there's some really solid, like proper, like some of the fell races and stuff out there.
Oh,
Like
looks cool. Yeah.
I think it was
That's
Ring of Steel that used to be on the Golden Trail
yeah.
Series race circuit. That's a nasty cool race.
Yeah, that one, like Glencoe Skyline, I think this is the last year it's happening. But there's also tons of these smaller, local fell races that just seem awesome. I think it would be a really cool scene to experience.
Yeah, I have a buddy of mine. Shout out to George Foster. He's a friend of the pod. He's been on the episode a couple times, or just once. Sorry. He lives in the UK, and he's a more or less he's an ultra runner, trail runner, fell runner. But he hyped up the fell running scene so much to me, and just kind of it's so much more complex than you think. Like you have to have it's like orienteering with trail running. It's completely unique.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems wild. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like the opposite of a lot of races right now. It's like you still just want like basically the racing flats with gigantic lugs and a lot of confidence for the downhills.
Oh yeah, man. And the bogs, like if you fall into a bog, like you could die. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff for sure. It'd be great
Yeah.
to experience.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah, no, there's some proper solid race. Dude, that sounds like a great calendar though. I mean, I
Yeah.
think a Sky Race Day Matheson, I had a couple buddies race it last year and just like the experience that they said was like it's an epic race. Just amazing.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Yeah, Nick's raced it before and he had nothing but good things to say about it. And I know a few other people who have raced it. And it seems like a good race for me because it's just one long climb and then some technical ridge running and then a fast, gnarly descent. So, you know, could be a good one, but we'll
Yeah.
see what I can afford at that point.
For sure, for sure. Dude, you should put on your schedule if you're around. Cirque Series is having a race at Crystal this year. Love
Oh,
to see you
nice.
out there for that.
Right
So
on. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a nice part of Washington.
I've never been out there. So or
Yeah,
never been out to that like specific area. So I have to
yeah,
check
that's
that out.
cool. I've only been there in the winter, but I think in the summer it would be lovely.
Yeah, man.
No, thank you.
There's some good stuff. All right, so we're gonna start winding down in questions, but I'm so curious about you. You're very interesting to me. Like I'm kind of curious as like what your relationship with competition is, and the reason I ask that because it's kind of a loaded question. Like you race a lot of super competitive stuff and you're at the very top of the sport, but you also seem like the excitement and the soul of the sport is very important to you, just from what I've kind of picked up in the conversation. Would you say that's accurate or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I value the history of these sports, and um, I think for me, competition is, I mean, I'm just naturally a competitive person and always have been. But I think I also value the community around it. I value that competing kind of, it makes me travel places that I wouldn't normally travel to, like if it wasn't for skimo, who knows if I would have even traveled to Europe at this point, but now I've been to a whole bunch of different countries in Europe. So I feel really privileged to have done that. And that's kind of all thanks to competition. Um, and I think it does motivate me to train for sure. Like, I mean, I think if I wasn't competing, I would probably still train quite a lot because I do like, I'm quite interested in FKTs and speed records and just moving through the mountains. But I think competition kind of gives you that extra edge to train a little bit more, and kind of gives you like a very linear goal to focus on. And I do think, like I was chatting about this with Nick and Adam while skiing yesterday, like racing it's kind of like one of the purest forms of pushing yourself and testing yourself. You're like able to take away like most of the variables, and it's just it's pretty simple in that sense. Whereas sometimes in the mountains there's other variables that get involved, and I do like that about racing. It's just like just you and other racers.
Yeah, it's a good answer, man. So let's talk about a race day, right? You're getting ready for a race. What's the song you're listening to?
Oh man, yeah, I feel like it's kind of funny. I used to listen to like a ton of punk rock when I was a teenager. And then I like kind of got out of it for a couple of years, but then recently, like in the last 2 years here, I've started listening to a lot of punk rock again. So, probably some punk rock of some sort, whether that's like, you know, I don't know, Green Day or something from that era, probably, because that's kind of what I grew up listening to.
Hell yeah, dude. That's a good choice.
Maybe some Rage Against the Machine. It sort of depends, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you listen to music at all in like runs or like during like if you're on like a long like uphill day for skimo? You ever?
Yeah, it really depends on the day. Like, I mean, realistically, training is not always glorious, and some days you do have to kind of drag your ass out of the door. And yeah, music definitely helps me get through some long sessions if I'm like feeling a bit unmotivated or I do listen to a lot of podcasts. But yeah, a lot of music. I've always dabbled with guitar. I'm not like definitely not a great guitar player, but I do like to pick it up once in a while and learn new songs and whatnot.
Nice. Curious to see who inspires you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've always like Nick's one of my best friends and long-term mentors, but I've always been very inspired by what he does in the mountains. There's a number of alpinists that inspire me. Like I'm very inspired by the things Colin Haley does in the mountains. I mean, Killian's been one of my biggest inspirations since I was quite young. Um, there's still some mountain bikers I really look up to, like completely removed from endurance sport, but I've always really looked up to Brandon Semenuk. Um, I just think he's very smooth, and I think being smooth is very applicable to any sport. But no, I mean, I look up to my coach, David. Yeah, there's a lot of folks out there. I don't think I could really pin it down to just like this is one person that inspires me, but probably a mix of of alpinists, climbers, runners. Yeah.
It's a good answer. As someone who, as an athlete on a global team, you kind of have your pick now of what races you want to do, more or less. Is there anything like what is there a goal race or a pinnacle race that you haven't done yet that you have something on the board, as a goal?
Yeah, I mean, I would really love to run Zagama at some point. Just like, it really does seem like one of the most classic races in trail running. It's just so much history there. So Zagama is very high on the list. Um, I'm not like desperate to race at UTMB yet, but I think OCC would definitely be a long-term goal of mine. I'd love to race there in the future. Um, and then, just keep going back to races like Mount Marathon and Minotaur. And I'm excited to see what the rut is like this year because I've heard they're quite similar. A lot of shale. So
Yeah.
curious to see what I think about that course. And but yeah, I think highest on my list is probably Zagama at some point.
Nice. That's a great choice.
It's always a little bit tough because it's pretty early. So I think maybe one of these years I'll try and end my skimo season a bit earlier so I can really get myself into proper running shape early in the year. But yeah, we'll see.
It's a good choice. Such an iconic race, man. Like one of the top in the world,
Yeah, I would love to race it on a muddy year, actually. I'm like, I hope eventually when I go, it's like a really heinous stormy day because it always seems so epic when it's there's hundreds of people lining the course and there's people are sliding in the mud. It looks awesome.
What was it? I think it was 2 years ago when Manuel Morales won it. It was the last like nasty stormy year, and like everybody was falling and slipping all over the place.
Yeah, probably the best possible conditions for him. He's so good in those adverse conditions. Yeah, a lot of respect for that guy.
Yeah, that guy's a beast. One of the best in the world. What was I going to ask you? I think I lost my train of thought. Oh man. It was going to come to me. Oh, Mount Marathon. That's what I was going to ask you. Now that you've been on the I know it's hard to peg these things because different fields come in different years. It's always a different game. But is your goal going into Mount Marathon this year? Is your goal and intention to try to win that race?
I mean, I would love to try and win it, but I mean, I feel like it always depends if Norris is going to show up or not. Because,
right.
I mean, the time he ran last year was like truly a world-class time. Like his ascent time was quite insane. But I think more for me, like it would be, I think definitely a goal to try and win Mount Marathon at some point, but more just chipping away at personal records there. Like I ran basically 44 flat this year. So I'd love to try and get it, a bit closer to 43 flat this coming year, or if I could mid 42. But yeah, I think that's more of what I'm focused on there is running a good PR. But that's also challenging because, it could be pouring rain and that could be kind of irrelevant. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, conditions, fields, the whole thing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Jesse, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. This was an amazing conversation. I wish you the absolute best of luck this year. And I hope we have many more conversations down the line. I'll probably actually see you at Mount Marathon. So
yeah, awesome. I hope so. Yeah. If I were to give you any advice for that, it's to try and book your accommodation as early as possible because Seward's super small and otherwise you'll end up sleeping somewhere very noisy.
Oh yeah, we don't want that. Definitely not.
Yeah. Come up for a visit to Squamish at some point, and yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Oh, for sure, man, for sure. Oh man, what a fun episode! Thanks so much to Jesse for coming on. I thought you guys would like it. Just really cool guy, very exciting, and just has such a bright future. It's going to be exciting to see what he's going to be able to do, both in the skimo realm as well as the mountain running realm over the next few years. He has a very, very bright future. Guys, before we get going, I got some housekeeping stuff. Do me a favor and hop on Instagram. Let's get Jesse some followers. You can find him at Jessie, JESSIE.McAuley. That's MCAULEY as his Instagram handle. Give him a follow, send him a DM, let him know what you guys thought about the episode. I'm sure he would really appreciate those words of encouragement and just some great feedback from the episode. Before you guys get going, do me a favor. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or YouTube, please give this a thumbs up and give us a 5-star rating and review. That would mean the absolute world to me. As I say this every week, and I sound like a broken record. The goal of this great podcast is to be able to share this and cover our great sport and share the stories of these amazing athletes. We can't do that without your support. So thank you guys so much. And then last but not least, I have something I'm so excited to announce. You guys probably saw this one coming. Get ready for some ads But I am so excited that my sponsor of 3 years, Ultimate Direction, is going to be sponsoring the podcast in 2025. Ultimate Direction, if you guys are unfamiliar with the brand, you should absolutely familiarize yourself with them. I'm going to have some codes, some discount codes for you guys coming up, so you can go and get stocked up on some new gear. Ultimate Direction is an amazing hydration solution company. Like I said, vests, packs, anything from waist belts to anything hydration solutions based. Like I said, it's they make some great stuff as well as apparel. And we have some really exciting things that are going to be coming in the horizon towards the end of January, early February. So keep a lookout on that. I can't reveal too much because we're going to be doing a podcast on it, but there is some exciting new products that are going to be dropping within the next 6 weeks that I think is going to transform the way you guys view the brand. So it's a very exciting time to be partnered with them, and I'm so stoked to have their support going forward in 2025. So guys, thanks so much for your support. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Have a great long run this weekend. Have a great workout. Enjoy yourself. Have fun. And I'll be with you guys next week.